If you built the Bullseye game in your first Kotlin Android app course, then you're already familiar with some Kotlin syntax and concepts. This episode will serve as a basic introduction to explore the Kotlin language if you're new to Kotlin, and a refresher if you've watched the first Kotlin Android app course. So let's get started. First, let's explore naming data and data types. Variables are used to store data in a program. Let's say you want to store a person's age. You store it in a variable. You add some code inside the main function. I'll declare a variable named age, which is of the type int, and is equal to 32. In here, you declared a variable named age, and assigned the value 32 to it. So, the age variable stores the value 32. We also give it an integer data type. Int is used to store whole numbers. We use the var keyword in the variable definition because we want to let Kotlin know that this variable can change. So, the age next year will be 33. So using var makes it possible for you to reassign the age to a new value. Do note I mentioned that var is a keyword. Keywords in programming are just sets of reserved words used internally by the programming language. They are reserved words, so for instance, you can't name your variable with the word var. Now, speaking of keywords, we have another one we can use to denote data called val. And no, this is not a short form for Valentine. Enter the following code to store a name. This time around, we use the val keyword to make it a constant, meaning you can't change it and it will represent the person's name. This makes sense because a person's name would always remain the same every year. A good technique is to define everything using val and only change it to var if the compiler complains. Also, notice that we use a different data type called string. Strings are used to store a collection of characters, in this case, a text. Do note that the text must be wrapped in double quotes. If you use single quotes, then it becomes a character, and you have to change the data type to char, and you must pass in only one character as its name suggests. To print out the name using the println function, pass it in as an argument like so. Run the project by pressing the green arrow in the toolbar above. You should see the name in the Run panel below. Now, you might notice how the editor has grayed out the types here. This is because Kotlin can infer the type based on the values passed to it in the declaration, and as such, you don't always have to explicitly mention them. This is called type inference. Let's add a third value here named last name. Once again, use a val, but this time around, don't add the type, just set it to Balogun. You can see that even though you haven't mentioned the type, the compiler can recognize it's a string. Kotlin also supports types other than string and int, so define another constant named weight and set it to 80.1. That's kind of my average weight at the moment, but let's just assume that Ayo weighs the same. Because you used a decimal point, the type of the value is a double. Now, instead of just printing the values, you can add extra text to them or even interpolate them into another string. Let's see what that means. Add another println call and put in the following description. You're printing out the message Ayo is a musician, where name will be replaced with the value from the variable. This happens when the string contains embedded expressions denoted with the $sign. And it is called string templates or string interpolation in some other programming languages. And by the way, Ayo Balogun is an Afrobeat musician popularly known as Wizkid. Run the project to see the string printed out. Cool. Now, you remember how age is a variable, right? This means you can change it. Let's say a year passes and Ayo ages a little more. To add a year to age, you can use the plus equal to operator, which uses the current value to add a number and then reassigns the age variable. Add in the code like so. and add a print statement before and after the age increment. Run the project to see the change in the age. String templates are really useful, and you can use it to interpolate more than one value in a string, or even to create values for your variables or constants. Instead of printing out each value independently, you can format them in one string and print it all out in one go. Add the following codes to your project. Run the project to see the values nicely formatted. As mentioned, you can use string templates to assign values to variables and constants. Let's do that by creating a constant named fullname and print it out. Enter the following code. Run the project and you should see the full name. Values are not there just for assigning and printing out. They can be transformed from one type to another, like from a number to a string or from a string to a number. This type of conversion is necessary when doing some type of computation. Let's see how to do that. Paste in the following code. In the first part, you're converting the age value to a string, and in the second, you're doing a reverse operation by converting a string to an integer. The last example takes the full name string and assigns its length to a constant. Length is a property of the string class, and it returns the number of characters in a string. Run the project to see the values printed out accordingly. The final basic concept you'll use in your code is the process of commenting code. Comments are different from pieces of code in that they aren't executed. Instead, they serve to help developers understand what a piece of code does, to showcase example usage, or even as official documentation for some features in your code. Let's add a few comments to your code. The most basic comment is the line comment. You add a line comment like so. They start with a forward slash and asterisk, and end with an asterisk and forward slash. You can see that you can also nest comments within other comments for further clarification. The last type of comment is the Kotlin or Java doc comment type. Doc stands for documentation, and it is used just for that. Let's scroll to the top of the main function and write a small documentation comment. To open documentation comments, enter the following. The distinction between these comments and a regular multiline one is that this one has two asterisks after the first slash. You can also see that the comments are green instead of gray. This is to make them more noticeable, as they are documentations after all. Tap enter a few times to add new lines after the second asterisk. The real power of this comment is the ability to reference things. Add the following text to the comments. You can see that you can reference the main function, for example, or any other function in the project. If you click on the reference, it will highlight the function within the file. You can also hold down Command and click on it, or Control and click on Windows to jump to the definition. Notice the line where you referenced arguments. There are no parameters within this function, so it doesn't lead to anywhere. But let's add the parameter to the main function as follows. Every main function can receive string arguments from the run panel if you're running it through the run panel client. If you go back to the arguments reference, you can see that they are all highlighted. These type of comments are used internally in Kotlin to explain functions and other code that Kotlin provides. Just hover over a function or class, and the documentation comments are displayed with the necessary information you need. These are the basics of the Kotlin programming language. It's time to proceed through the rest of the course. See you in the next episode.